We're in Genesis 17. So if you could find that in your Bible. Tonight we're going to begin in verse 15. We're jumping into God's appearance that starts in chapter 17 to Abram after all these years, and he's going to now fulfill his promise of the covenant child to be born. But in verse 15, then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I'll bless her, and indeed I will give you a son by her. And then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. And then Abraham fell on his face, and he laughed. And he said in his heart, will a child be born to a man 100 years old? And will Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. But God said, no. But Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I've heard you. Behold, I will bless him, and I will make him fruitful, and I'll multiply him exceedingly. He shall become the father of 12 princes, and I'll make him a great nation. But my covenant I'm going to establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at the season next year. When he finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all the servants who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's household, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the very same day as God had said it to him. And now Abraham was 99 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the very same day, Abraham was circumcised, and Ishmael his son. All the men of his household who were born in the house or bought with money from a foreigner were circumcised with him. Let's pray. Lord, as we come back now to our verse-by-verse study of the book of Genesis, there are things you want to teach us that began way back in the beginning. Lord, this ritual of circumcision, we've studied it, how you have given it in this chapter, how you want this man of faith to be set apart in the most private areas of his life. Sexually, Lord, you want him to be yours, a marked man. And Lord, how you want us to put off the flesh, how you call us in the New Testament to put off the foreskin of our heart, that hardening of our heart, Lord, and you want us to live alive to you. And how we pray tonight, your word would help us to know how to do that. So bless your people as they've come in faith. Wake us up, encourage us, Lord, stir us up to obey you. And help us to trust you with the hard things that are going on in our life that we don't want, we didn't like, and we didn't expect, but we trust you in the midst of them to know that you're still God, you're still governing, you're still good. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you can be seated. Anybody need an outline before we get into the study over here? Anybody else? Outline? Way back in the center. If we have anybody that has some extras, I'm hoping. I won't see anybody moving, so a couple over here. Yeah, thanks. Larry's going to help you out there. Anybody else need one? Way up here in the front. Okay, she doesn't want her. She'll give you. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. Okay, anybody else? Over here on one side, you got it? All right. All right. Well, you know, one of the fruit of the Spirit, the second one mentioned in that great list of the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5:22 is what? What's the second fruit of the Spirit? Or really the second aspect of the one fruit of the Spirit is joy. And someone has said a gloomy Christian is a contradiction in terms. See, I don't like that. No, I'm just kidding. I think it was D.L. Moody who said that. That the Bible tells us that God's joy is our birthright. Not necessarily always happy about everything, but a joy that trusts the Lord through the hard times, that believes that he's working, and has a peace that trusts that he's going to take us through whatever we're going through. Let me read to you what Peter wrote. This isn't in your outline. It's not part of the study, but here's what Peter said. He said, in this, you greatly rejoice, even though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed with various trials. And you've been distressed with various trials, so the proof of your faith, being more precious than gold, which is perishable, even though tested by fire, might be found to result in praise, and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And though you have not seen him, you've never seen Jesus, you love him. And though you do not see him right now, but believe in him, you greatly rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, obtaining as the outcome of your faith the salvation of your souls. How that's what we want. Lord, we want to grow in our joy. We want to be evidence that the Spirit of God is filling us, and not just when things are good, but especially when they're not, because I can be joy-filled as a non-Christian if things are going my way. But when things aren't, it's going to be pure faith, and it's going to be a spiritual work. Well, put this down. We see in verses 15 and 16, God's blessing for a faithful wife. God's blessing on a faithful wife, and God is now turning his blessing from Abraham, and he's turning to talk about his wife, but he's still talking just to Abraham. Sarah's not there. Verse 15, then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I'll bless her, and indeed I'll give you a son by her. Then I'll bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Would you put this down? The man of faith is called to honor his wife. The man of faith is called to honor his wife. Now, we've been studying the book of Genesis, watching Abraham and Sarah, and sometimes they make really great moves of faith, and sometimes not so much. And it wasn't but a few chapters ago we read about Sarah had this idea of how they could fulfill God's promise, remember? And so while Sarah made the mistake of Hagar Gate, we'll call it, it was her idea. Hey, I can have a child by my handmaid, and Abraham says, well, whatever you say, honey. And we know how that turned out, how God is not going to be accepting Ishmael as his promised one because it was conceived by the flesh. But Sarah did make the mistake of that, but she still becomes a model to other women according to the Bible. I want you to jot down 1 Peter 3 and verse 6, where Sarah is specifically pointed out. It says, just as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, you have become her children if you do what is right without being frightened by any fear. So interesting. God calls Abraham in this chapter. We've already studied it a few weeks ago, but just right before this, God changes Abram's name to Abraham. We talked about that, from exalted father to a father of a multitude. And now God calls her name Sarah. It's similar to Sarai, but a little different. Now, there are two schools of thought as to what Sarai's name means. There are those who believe Sarai in Hebrew means contentious, and Sarah does mean princess. So that's possible, and certainly there's an aspect of where Sarai brought contentiousness into their relationship through this thing with Hagar. Most translators, and I think to be fair to the Hebrew, Sarai means my princess. And Sarah just means princess. You say, well, how's that much of an improvement? Well, actually, my princess is talking about her relationship just with her husband. Sarah now puts on her an honor that is going to be much greater than just in her relationship with him. And by the way, God doesn't call her princess. Rather, God tells Abraham to call her princess. By the way, this word princess, Sarah, is translated queen in the book of Isaiah. And clearly, however you read it, God is putting on her a new honor and that she's ever had, and an esteem because of what he plans to do with her in the future. I heard this jockey who had been married to his wife for years and years and years, so was once asked, what's the secret of a long and happy marriage? He said, well, the secret of a long marriage I found is to treat your wife as a thoroughbred, and she'll never become an old nag. And okay, that in his language is a way of saying the same thing. Treat your wife with honor. And so it's interesting. God basically says, you call her princess, and then I will bless her. That's the order. First, you call her queen or princess, and I'll make her fruitful in the marriage. Interesting. Will you jot down Psalm 128, verses 3 and 4, where we have God's promise of blessing on the man who fears God. Psalm 128, verse 3, your wife shall be like a fruitful vine within your house, your children like olive plants around your table. Behold, for thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. So we see Abraham, not only in his own personal life, but in his marriage now, being called by God. I want you to put honor on your wife and see how I feel about her and treat her with honor. And if you'll do that, I'm going to bless her through you. There's a need for wives to be treated with value by their husbands, and God calls us to do that. By the way, it's interesting. The very first man on earth gave his wife a new name. God did not name woman Eve. God didn't say, here you go, her name is Eve. No, she was just called Isha. Man was Ish, she's Isha. It was Adam who gave the name to woman Eve, by the way, at a low point in their relationship right after the fall. And even though everything had changed and it wasn't good, he calls her Eve because she's the mother of all living. Very positive name that he gave her. And so it's very interesting. We see this with Abraham. God doesn't just change Sarah's name. He says, I want you to change her name. As a husband, I want you to talk to her and treat her and let her know the value that she has. I mean, if you think about it, how did Sarah ever hear this message? Well, obviously God called Abraham to convey it. We all know Jeremiah 29:11, or some of us do. Enough of you know that I can ask, who can quote that one? Jeremiah 29:11, what does it say? Yeah. God says, I know the plans I have for you. He's talking to Israel, but we can apply it to ourselves. God has plans for you, Steve. They're good. I hope it's to go out to lunch or dinner sometime soon with me. But for all of us, God has plans for our lives. And he says they're good, to bring you a benefit and a plan. In other words, we should be excited about God's plans. We don't know what they are, but we can know they're good. We can know they're encouraging. And here's what I want you to know. There are many wives and mothers who suffer a sense of no real value still in our culture, in the church even, beyond bearing children. They feel like, well, when I've done that, I'm done. You know, I don't know my purpose. But God actually has a future of value in your life beyond just child raising, but including that if that's what he's called you to do. Put this down. God gives the wife equal honor to the husband. You see, in verse 16, what God said to Abraham earlier in the chapter about he's going to be the father of many nations, he's saying the same thing to her. I will bless her. I'll give you a son by her. Then I'll bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Well, that's what he had said to Abraham. You're going to be a father of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. And you know, I don't know how many of you have ever seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Okay, the ones that are laughing have seen it. The other ones have no idea what you're talking about. So there's this scene where, is her name Tula? Is that how you say it? Tula? She's the one who wants to get married to a stranger, a foreigner, and her dad's not interested. Anyway, she's going to her mom, and she's very upset. And she says this, she says, Dad won't change his mind. The man is the head of the house, she says. And Mom says, oh, let me tell you something, Tula. The man is the head, but the woman is the neck. And she can turn the head any way she wants. Now, I think it's kind of funny, but I think sometimes we neglect to see how much privilege, authority, and esteem God puts on the wife in the marriage. The exact same privilege and authority and relationship to the future of God's blessings are in Sarah. There will be no nation of Israel without Sarah. It's not just Abraham. He can't do that alone. God, you know, when the day that Becky married me, the very day she married me, her name was changed. Her address got changed. Suddenly, you know, when we got married, she got added to my bank account. She could withdraw all 50 cents and whatever I had in there, $1.50. I made copies of all of my keys. I had two. Key to my 72 Nova and a key to the apartment. But everything I owned legally became hers. Legally, there is no his and hers. When you're married, there's ours. You can call, obviously she has whatever things that she might have that we let her use, but it's both of ours. I mean, I'm not going to use her shower cap or her whatever. I don't know, she doesn't have one. But, whatever a woman would. Her robe won't fit me. The day you become Christ's, the day you accept Christ, the day you receive the Lord, you become Christ's bride. Yes, you're engaged, but as far as God's concerned, by the way, it's interesting in the Hebrew culture, really there's the bond of marriage happens in engagement. You have to get a divorce to get unengaged. Did you know that? In the Hebrew culture, you can't just break off the engagement. You got to get a divorce. While you haven't come together fully yet, that happens at the marriage, which for us spiritually happens after the rapture, the marriage supper of the Lamb. We're engaged, and at that point, everything that is Christ's is yours. And I like seeing the honor that is put on the wife in this passage. Jot down Ephesians 1:3. It's there that Paul makes this great statement about our relationship with the Lord. He said, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ," this is Ephesians 1:3, "who has blessed us with every spiritual blessings in the heavenly places in Christ." Because you're in Christ, everything Christ has is now yours. Paul goes on to say that whether it's the world or life or things to come, it's all yours. Just as though you were Jesus Christ. You're not. But because you're his bride, hey, same honor. Same incredible authority. What did Jesus say? All authority has been given to me. So now you go with it. Tag, you're it. As the Father has sent me, so send I you. Go be the body of Christ, you see. We'll put this down, letter B. God's blessing is always a laughing matter. A laughing matter. And then jot this word down, the word ahead. Believe God's greatest blessings are still ahead in your own life. Do you? Or do you feel like, oh no, the best part of my life is over? It was when I graduated high school. It was a great day. Burned rubber all over the high school campus before I was... Oh, no, that wasn't me. Oh, sorry. If you're looking back on the best days of your life, you're not a Christian. The best days of your life, I don't care how good they were, are ahead of you. Do you know what it says of the Proverbs 31 woman? And you may be a guy, but in this regard, you better be like her because I need to be. She smiles at the future. Are you? Are you like in dread of the future? Like, I don't have anything to look forward to. Oh, yes, you do. If you're a Christian, you sure do. You need to know that. But look at verse 17. Then Abraham fell on his face, and he laughed. Now let me just ask you a question. Why did Abraham laugh? Raise your hand. Yes, Fernando. Unbelief. Good idea when his wife laughs. It's unbelief. It's not unbelief when Abraham laughs. Why does he laugh? Because he's not rebuked at all. Yeah.
Well, it came true. His,
Say it again. God promised him a son, and it came true. Let me put it this way to you. Having a son with Sarah was absolutely a mind-blowing blessing. Just having a son with her at all, not to mention this promise of having a multitude of a generation of kings and nations coming from him. Listen, in the book of Romans, the verses aren't on the screen, but in Romans 4:20, it says that in verse 21, Abraham did not stagger at the promises of God, but he grew strong in faith. Now, the promises of God seemed impossible. I'm an old man. I'm 100 years old. My wife's we're not going to have kids tomorrow. That's just not even a good one, God. And it could be, some think, oh, he's laughing that this could be possible. It doesn't appear to be. He did not stagger in unbelief. The word stagger means kind of to stub your toe. No, rather than stubbing his toe in unbelief, he bit his tongue. He does not mock God. He laughs in his heart. You see, God is going to name his son, what is it? Isaac, which means? Means laughter. You're going to name your son laughter. Here's the idea. As a constant reminder that my promises to you, listen to me now, are too good to be true. They were more than what you ever expected. I want you to jot down 1 Corinthians 2:9. You've heard this verse with reference to heaven. It can apply to heaven. In context, it's not talking about heaven. But we always quote it about heaven because you can. But we should know that this is not limited to just when we get to heaven. 1 Corinthians 2:9, just as it is written, Paul says, things which eye has not seen, ear has not heard, and which have not entered into the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love him. Listen, this promise is just about God and you. Because of who he is, he has things for you both in heaven and on earth that are beyond what you would imagine for yourself. What does Paul say he is able to do? Exceedingly, abundantly, beyond all we ask or think. Mind-blowing and joy-filling. Too good to be true. This is beyond, like Zacharias in the New Testament, there in Luke, his hope of ever having a child was long too, it had come and gone. And yet Gabriel shows up and says, guess what? Someone's going to be expecting. And he's thinking, who is that? And he says, your wife. And he says, no way, Yahweh. And he says, what? I am Gabriel. I'm standing in the presence of God, and you're not going to believe me? Well, since you don't have anything good to say, you'll have nothing to say until the baby's born. Can't talk because of your unbelief. Unbelief will shut your mouth, by the way. That's true in general. But anyway, very cool. We need to believe, every one of us, not just Abraham, we need to respond. God, even before you do it, you have things that I couldn't ask for, that if I asked for, I'd ask for less. And so, Lord, I'm excited about what your plans are. What are they? I don't know. They're just good. They're really good. Put this down. Stop asking God to bless your mess. Put in the word mess, verse 18. But Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Here, this thought of having a son is overwhelmingly exciting, but I don't know how that's going to even work, and why don't we just go with the flow of what we already got? I love my son, Ishmael. I know I stepped out of your will. I know that wasn't right, but he's here now, and why don't we just do it that way? Read an article, listen to this. A Pennsylvania man is reminded every day that he isn't as smart as he thought he was. Jerry Lynn has an alarm clock inside the wall of his home which rings at 7:50 p.m. every day. During daylight savings time, 6:50 p.m. Lynn said he tied the clock to a string in September 2004, lowered it into the wall through a vent in his home. He set the alarm hoping noise would help him drill a hole in the right spot through which to pass a TV cable. But the battery-operated clock fell off the string and has stayed inside the wall ever since. He's been unable to retrieve the clock, and he figured the battery would eventually die. So far, it hasn't. So every day, the alarm goes off to remind him that he's not that smart. And here's Ishmael, who's going to live as a constant reminder that desire to fulfill God's promises by my own fleshly ideas, leaning on my own understanding, will never be blessed of God. Now, Abraham knew that he had blown it, and he stepped out of God's will in having Ishmael. But it's sort of like, God, I know I made a mess, but can you just bless my mess? But since Ishmael is not a child of God's promise, he will never be a channel of God's blessings. Let me say that again. Because he is not a child of God's promise, he cannot be a channel of God's blessing. Ishmael was the result of, you might say, it's kind of a picture of the first birth. He is that which the flesh can produce. Remember what Jesus said to Nicodemus? That which is of the flesh, it births the flesh can only birth that which is of the flesh. If you're born in the flesh, it's just flesh. Natural birth. But that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. By the way, it's interesting. Ishmael never gets a new name. Never gets a new name. You see, the flesh cannot change its nature. It is going to be and will always be the flesh. Paul says in the New Testament, for I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is in my flesh. Wishing is there, but the doing the good is not. Now, fact is, your old nature can be disciplined. Your old nature can be subdued and to some extent controlled. But your old nature cannot be changed. Remember, can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard change its spots? Then you who are evil can learn to do good. It's not that simple. That fleshly nature is still within us, and so we need that birth of the Holy Spirit. Isaac, on the other hand, represents what's born of God's miraculous promise and faith. You know, I heard a story years ago, back when, during the time of when communism was stronger here in the United States, and a man had gone to a park. He was a Christian, and he wanted to share the gospel, so he got a little soapbox, I guess, and got up and he started sharing the word, and these people started coming over, listening to him preaching about Jesus. And another guy who was part of a communist group came over and he said, hey, I want to talk to you guys. And he said, I want to talk to you about communism. Communism will make some changes in your life. He said, communism will put a new coat on every man. And the Christian said, yeah, but Jesus Christ will put a new man in every coat. The Spirit of God will give you a new life within that no amount of change on the outside could ever compete with. Put this down, accept God's no as his plan to bless you better. And you can only do this by faith. And I'm asking you right now maybe to think about something God has said no to you about, at least so far. So I'm asking you to believe this for yourself. Or maybe it's a permanent no. No, forever. Maybe you don't want to hear it, but God says no to Abraham in this text. So put in the word no, look at verse 19. He asks him, let Ishmael live before you. Let Ishmael be the promised one. And he says, verse 19, God said what? Can you say that louder? God said what? No. Yeah, we don't want to hear it, but it is a legitimate answer to prayer. You know, God's not answering my prayers. You mean he's saying no? Well, I was hoping he hadn't answered yet. God said no. But Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. You shall call his name Laughter, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. You know, when I first became a Christian, I didn't pray very much, and then I learned some things about prayer, and I started realizing, God will use me if I pray for people, and he'll do things in their life, and people said yes, and then you start praying and God starts doing things in people's life. It's pretty cool, you know. But when I first started to pray, I thought that was my job, was to kind of go around telling God who to bless. You know, bless them, and then God bless her, bless him, bless them, kind of like he was my servant, and I was releasing the blessing of God. And you grow up a little bit more in the Lord, and you realize that prayer is not that. Prayer is just your way and my way of showing up for duty, because we don't know the will of God. We prayed for a man tonight for cancer in his body. We know the will of God, according to James, is to gather the elders, anoint them with oil, and pray for healing. We know that much. We do not know it is going to be God's will to heal him. If you claim you know it's God's will to heal every person, let's talk afterwards, because I am convinced you're wrong. God uses sickness. Guess what? He uses sickness to get some of us to heaven. Everybody's going to die of something. But that doesn't mean he doesn't heal. It's God's will for us to pray for healing. By the way, I don't like to get together with a group of people who go, oh, God, please use the doctors. What? Listen, God doesn't need advice. Oh, God goes, really? The doc, good idea. We don't need to tell God how to heal. And he doesn't even tell us to pray for the doctors to heal people. He tells us to pray for physical healing. Okay, so we should ask for supernatural healing. It's his will for us to pray for that. But God is sovereign, and he may not choose to supernaturally heal. He does heal. And every time you get healed, he gets the credit, or at least he should. You don't go, well, God didn't heal me. It was that antibiotic. Oh, really? Okay. My Bible says God causes the grass to grow. Really? Yeah. I thought it was photosynthesis. No, it's God using photos. See, we need to see this divine work in the natural and trust God for how he does things, but we're very clear that we don't know the will of God. So when I pray for people, I can't tell God what to do, or if I do, I'm going to be awfully sorry a lot of the times. We need to say, God, accomplish your will that I'm really clueless about. And part of that is praying like this: Lord, do what's in your heart. We'll get together and we'll pray, Lord, bring a lot of people. Lord, bring some non-Christians. Lord, bring people to yourself. Well, it's fine to say those things, but what we realize is, God, do what you want to do tonight. Because I don't know what that is. I know it's to glorify your Son. I know it's to move in power. I know it's to meet needs, but I don't know. So, Lord, I just want your will to be done. In fact, I know what I'd want, but what did Jesus say? Jesus said, nevertheless. Hey, if Jesus is saying, don't do my will if it's not yours, what? Oh, I've got an idea of what it is. I don't have a clue what he wants to do tonight in your heart or mine. I know generalities. God knows exactly. So if you want to get in line with the kind of prayers God can answer, pray instead that he would really do his own will. And that's the problem that Abraham has to struggle with here, because he wants God to use Ishmael. You know, it may well pain you if you have Ishmael plans right now that God is not going to do what you have asked him to do. He will not do that with your Ishmael plans. He wants you to accept his will and not cling to your own. Ishmael brought dissension into the home. Isaac will bring laughter and joy into the home. But to receive all that God has for you, I mean, I said, smile at the future. The best is yet to come. But if that's true, you need to realize to receive that, you have to accept his no's for many things that you ask for. Mary and Martha were friends of Jesus. And they asked him for something they thought for sure he would do. What was it? Come heal Lazarus. You love him. Our brother, you're healing everybody else. Seems a pretty simple request. 911. By the way, it's biblical. When you have a problem, call Jesus, right? First thing, stop everything, call on the Lord. I could not find my Bible. I had preached on Sunday at the church in Havana. I searched high and low. I put it down for a few minutes, was talking and praying for people, went back. My Bible got raptured, which it almost needs a new body, so that was okay. But it was frustrating to me. I have some notes in here and things and underlining, and I thought, well, God, are you telling me it's time to finally get a new Bible? Peel every page apart, and start from scratch. Okay, if it's you, but I don't know if it's you or the devil. So I'm looking everywhere. I'm calling everybody, and most of them don't speak any English. And so they're sharing, the pastor's looking for his Bible, and everybody's looking, and we're looking everywhere. Actually, Steve Schambeck, our photographer, said, he's helping me look. He can't find it. He said, can we just pray? I go, yeah, why didn't I think I'm the prophet? Yes, let's pray. And literally 5 seconds after we said the amen, someone was, this it? And I'm going, I just have been over this entire church. How did you? Oh, it was out in the van already. Somebody put it out there, and they heard we were looking. Why is it that we struggle with asking God first? I don't know. I do too. It's not that big of an emergency. No one's dying. It's not that, it has to be big to talk to God, because he's busy running the universe. He don't have time to find Bibles. But he has time to count the hairs on your head, I guess. Huh? Yeah, Mary and Martha got a no. Paul had a thorn in his flesh. How many times did he ask? Enough. 3, complete asking. And God said, my grace is sufficient. But that means, no, I'm not going to heal you of that. Got a better plan. And Jesus, as we just talked about, said, Father, if it's possible, let this cup. Well, that cup was that cross, and that was why he came. And God said to his own son, no. If he said no to Mary and Martha, he said no to Paul, and he said no to Jesus, he's going to say no to me and you a lot. Every time we ask for something that's not what he feels is best. And here's what I'm asking you to do, to believe when he says no, that it's good. You go, well, I don't feel that way. I know it requires a little like faith to say, he's not giving me what I had asked for, what I wanted. I'm going to, by faith, trust that there's good reason for it. Listen, Father Knows Best was not just a sitcom of last century. It's eternal truth for you and me. He knows best. Why he's saying, no, Ishmael, not a chance. It's not going to happen. Abraham, give that up. Let Ishmael live before you. No, there's no Isaac. If we did that. Maybe you're here tonight. You got something you really want. And I listen, there's a cool verse that says, may God grant you all your petitions. I can write that down in everybody's card. I can say it to you because it's in the Bible. May God grant you all your petitions. Will he? I don't know. Hope he does. I don't know what your petitions are. And even if I did, I couldn't tell you. Maybe you say, well, I want to date her. Or I want to marry him. Or I want to get that job, or I want to make that deal, or I want to get involved in that ministry. God can do more, exceedingly more, but I don't know if it's best. I may have shared it here recently. I don't remember because I share stories. Did I tell you guys about what Greg Laurie's son Christopher said to him when he was a little boy, when Greg asked him what he wants for Christmas? I love this. Greg shared this the day that he stood in front of Harvest to share his grief that Christopher, his son, adult son, had died in a car accident out here on the 91. Christopher had worked for Harvest and did artwork for them, and Greg and Kathy and their family were grieving. But he said something that I'll never forget. He said when his son Christopher was a little boy, at Christmas, he would say, Christopher, what do you want for Christmas? And Christopher was really into Star Wars. And he had all, some Star Wars stuff. And he would go and he'd say, well, I want a Darth Vader, doll, or a, Luke Skywalker, or a lightsaber. He'd want this, one little thing. And Greg would go and just buy him a ton more. Like, he'd buy him the whole Millennium Falcon with all the pieces or something, this incredible thing. So he'd open up, wow, he'd go crazy. And this happened several years in a row until finally one year, right before Christmas, he said, Christopher, what do you want this year? And Christopher said, you decide, Dad. You make better choices than I do. Whatever you decide, Dad. And then Greg said, and that's how I feel right now. Because I would want my son here right now. But I am saying to God today, this is your choice. You decide. I accept that. Listen, I don't know how to navigate that kind of tragedy without the trust in God. But I can tell you this much, that every one of us are going to have no's given to us, and our resolve needs to be, God, I accept this as what's best to honor you and to help me grow. And I will trust you when you say no, that there's a good reason. Well, number 4, ask God to redeem what your flesh has produced. Can't make what the flesh is into the spirit, but in verse 20 and 21, listen to what God says. But as for Ishmael, I have heard you. In other words, you've asked. You want me to make him my promise. I can't do that. But as for Ishmael, I've heard you. I will bless him. I'll make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. He shall become the father of 12 princes. And those are listed later here in the book of Genesis, the genealogy of Ishmael. 22 Arab nations that exist, millions and millions of Arabs. And I'll make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this season next year. So God will bless Ishmael and even do a work in him because Abraham asked. So here's the principle, you guys. We can't reverse what the flesh has birthed, but listen to me now. We can dedicate what's been done to the Lord. Now that's interesting to me. God will get glory to himself by the promises that he pronounces on Ishmael and the fulfillment of those in answer to Abraham's prayer. You know, I think of Matthew in the New Testament. His name was Levi. What was Matthew's occupation when he met Jesus? Yeah, translated, paraphrase, rip-off. Okay, that is the tax collectors then, if not now. They took advantage and they ripped people off, and they were considered enemies because they worked for the Romans. So they were considered treasonous. And Jews hated them and looked down on them. They didn't see them as spiritual men. They weren't spiritual men. But very interesting, when Matthew gets saved, what is the first thing Matthew does according to the scriptures? Anybody know? What does he do? He throws a party. And who does he invite? Who does he know? Just like the woman at the well. Who does she know? Men. Who does Matthew know? Other rip-offs. So it's a party full of rip-off people that are not saved. And who else does he invite to the party? Jesus. Yeah. You have a sense that he wants them to know Jesus? Maybe share what he had met him. Maybe he'd been talking about him. Come meet a man that changed my life. I don't know, but I love that. And here God is going to redeem what has been fleshly in his life to something that can be. I remember I went to a Bible study when I was in high school. And I'll never forget, as we were there, this one gal, she locked her keys in her car before she came into the Bible study. She couldn't get into her car. And, it wasn't something you could do with a coat hanger or anything like that. And one of the guys goes, I can help her. And, oh, really? What? And he went out there for a little while, and he came back, and she's fine. She's good to go. I said, oh, how did you do that? He goes, I used to be a burglar. I still have my tools. And I thought, God can redeem stuff, man. He can take the stuff from your past, whether it's in your testimony now or somehow turn it around. And here God says, well, I can't replace Isaac because I have too much I want to do in my he'll never be. But I will use even what your flesh has produced. When it's dedicated to me now, I can turn it around for my glory. Put this down, letter C. Obedience offers same-day service. Put in the word same. Look at verse 22 and 23. When he finished, that is, God finished talking to Abraham, God went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all the servants who were born in his house, and all who were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's household, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskin you might want to underline, in the very same day as God had said to him. When we first meet Abraham, his name is Abram, and he is living where? Matey, pirate land up there. Of the Chaldees. And God calls him to leave. He calls him to leave his nation, his family, everything, and go to the place that God will show him. He's going to take him to the land of Canaan. And he leaves, he's supposed to leave his family behind, but if you read the text, he goes with his dad, a guy by the name of Terah. Terah is actually leading the way, kind of going with him. And of course, we got Lot along the way. He's part of the family that was supposed to be left behind, evidently, but they're all going. And it's kind of like he's obeying God, but not really, not fully. And they don't go to Canaan. They settle in a place called Haran, which is not Canaan. And they stay there until something happens. Very important. What is it that happens? The old man dies. The father, Terah, dies. And it's at that point that Abraham finally goes ahead and obeys God and goes down to Canaan, which is very interesting. Remember what that man said that Jesus said, come follow me? He said, well, first let me go bury my father. And Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead, but you come and follow me. Delayed obedience going on there at the beginning. Yeah, God said it. See, there's a lot of us in this room maybe who know God said this, but I'm not doing that in my life. I know I should, but I don't want to. I'm afraid. It would cost me too much. It would cost me my friends. It might cost me my job. I'm not ready to trust God with that. And as we grow in faith, this is the characteristics we want to see. What happens here in this text is the same day God said it, he did it. Want to study somebody interesting? Go study the New Testament Joseph. Both Josephs are men of God, but the New Testament Joseph, you know how many words Joseph speaks in the Bible? 0. Not one word is ever recorded of Mary's husband Joseph. was a man of few words. He never said a word. Now, he's not mute. Nothing's recorded that he ever said. But 3 times God speaks to him, and 3 times he immediately wakes up and obeys. He's a man of action. He just does. That's what we want to become. We'll put this down. Don't forget there is a Pharaoh in your flesh. There's a Pharaoh. You have that line, number 1? You don't have that? Well, then just write it down. Don't forget see, if I didn't give you an outline, you'd be doing these. Oh, I forgot that one. Don't forget there is a Pharaoh in your flesh. You say, what do you mean? Remember when Moses came to Pharaoh and said, hey, when do you want me to get rid of these frogs? Remember this one? This is crazy. They're in the book of Exodus. And Pharaoh thinks about it. They're miserable. They're everywhere. It's gross. Tomorrow. It's like, what is that? Tomorrow? How about yesterday is what I would have said. Or now. Nope, not Pharaoh. But there is a Pharaoh in our flesh. Jot down Hebrews 4 and verse 7. Hebrews 4 and verse 7. God again fixes a day, saying today, through David, after so long a time, just has been said before, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. When God speaks to you, don't harden your hearts and say, well, I'm going to get around to that. Somebody gave me years ago this little wooden thing. It's made of wood, it's round, and it says T-U-I-T, to it. Well, what is that? They said, that's a round to it. What? Yeah, you're always saying you're going to get around to it. Well, I just gave you. No, you can't say that anymore. Someday I'll get around to it. You already have one. When there's a Pharaoh in your flesh, there are frogs in your future. That's just the bottom line. At least one more day of them. We put off things constantly, and all of us do, but we want to grow and say, well, God, when you say it, when I hear it, I'm going to do something now with it. It'll be easier to say no if I don't. I heard this true story. This guy who was cleaning out his junk drawer. How many of us have junk drawers? Okay, the rest of you need one. I think you really need one. If you don't have a junk drawer, something's wrong with that. But anyway, some of us have. That's all we have. Anyway, but he was cleaning out his junk drawer, and he had not done that in a long time, and he ran across a shoe repair ticket that he had forgotten 10 years before. He had taken some shoes in, got the ticket, threw it in the drawer, forgot about the shoes. And he wasn't even sure the place was still in business. And so he looked it up, and back then it was on the Yellow Page, it was still there. So he, for fun, just thought he'd go by, see if it was still owned, but the same guy owned it. And he said, yeah, I'm just here to pick up my shoes. And he gave him the ticket. Guy looks at it, he goes, a second, let me check. Goes back and that goes, be ready next Tuesday. It's like, yep, we are pros at procrastinating, and it just comes natural. Put this down, letter D. Your obedience will affect your whole family. Your whole family. Look at verse 24. Now Abraham was 99 when he was circumcised in his flesh, and Ishmael, his son's 13, when he was circumcised in his flesh. And on the same day, both father and son are circumcised. So put this down. Obey and then lead your children the same way. By the way, it only works in this order. When you obey and then you lead your children to do the same thing you're doing. In other words, you can't lead someone someplace you're not. You can't say, I'm going to lead you. Go down there and do it. You can't tell your kids to do something you're not doing. Don't drink. That's bad for you. Don't smoke. It'll kill you. But shouldn't we just let teenagers decide for themselves? That'd be verse 25. Look at verse 25. Ishmael, his son, was how old? Yeah, he's kind of a teenager. 13, while dad leads him into this dedication. Now, I wonder how many young people are not following the Lord today because their dad didn't really lead them in that direction. And if you don't lead your children, somebody else certainly will. Put this down. Help your child internalize their own relationship with God. Leading your children is no guarantee they will believe or continue to follow the Lord. That train up a child in the way he shall go is not a promise that if you bring them to Sunday school and you force them to go to church while they're living with you, they will eventually come back to Jesus. That's not what that verse is about, and it's not a promise you should claim to be that. Raising children is kind of like farming crops. You can do everything right with farming. You can till the soil, you can put in the soil amendment, you can plant good seed, you can water it, make sure it gets enough sun. You can do everything for a crop that should bring a good crop, but you cannot control the weather. And you can't control catastrophes that happen. You can't, a blight, whatever, you can't. There are things you have no control over. You can do everything right, and the crop will still be negatively affected because notice you can do everything that will help it to happen right, but it's no guarantee. But I guarantee you if you neglect any of those things, you can certainly pretty much guarantee yourself no crop. And parenting is sort of like that. See, Ishmael is just going through a ritual. There's no personal relationship with God going on here. He is going to be circumcised, but he's not having a relationship with the Lord. There are many people that were brought up at Calvary Chapel of Costa Mesa, graduated from MCA and Calvary Chapel High School, who are worldly and living in unbelief today. Just because their parents believed and they grew up at a good, solid church. It can happen here. It can happen anywhere. We need to know that. But your children and grandchildren and my children and grandchildren need to understand that our family, including them, that our relationship to God is what makes us different from other people in this world. And why? Why? God had spoken to Abraham. He didn't speak to Ishmael. The fact is that's ultimately a decision that every child has to make for themselves. See, your children, by the way, says a lot of us have older children. I have adult children. Your children are never too old to be led by you or to be influenced by you. Stop thinking that way. If you think about what was Joshua's last known address, it was when he was old and stricken in years, and he announces to the whole nation, I'm going the way of all the earth, I'm going to die. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Right to the end, he's letting everybody, this is the way my family goes. I'm speaking for everybody in my family. As far as I'm concerned, this is who we are. And Abraham is going to influence his children and his servants and his home. Put this down. Surrendering all means transferring your security. Now, I say that because I want you to look at the text real quick as we finish. It says, this is verse 27, all the men of his household who were born in the house or bought with money from a foreigner were circumcised with him. His servants were not just his possessions, they were also his protection. I say this because, remember, he had a big house. He had 318 men that went out to fight. Remember that battle to get Lot back? He's got a lot of servants, and they're all circumcised the same day. And what does that tell us, at least for a short time? He's vulnerable. Do you remember another story about the Shechemites, the whole city who got circumcised in order to do business with the Israelis? And while they were circumcised and in their pain, they were slaughtered. Abraham is going to obey God, and obedience and faith in God at times will make you vulnerable, and you're going to have to trust the Lord. I could lose this, I could have this happen, but if God is calling you to do it, say, I am going to trust in God. I want you to finally jot down Psalm 62 and verse 6, and we finish. Let's have the worship team come. Psalm 62 and verse 6. David said, He, the Lord, He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be greatly shaken. And how the Lord wants to be, at times he's going to call you and say, will you trust me? You say, but Lord, what if this? What if that? But I want you just to trust me. Yes, you are vulnerable, but I'll put my angels surrounding you. There is nothing that's going to get. 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not approach you because you have made the Lord God your refuge. Let's all stand and let's close in song together.